to the commissioners and all the others that are on the call. We certainly appreciate the chance to present our budget for 2021. On the call today with me, of course, I'm the superintendent of the Franklin County Board of Developmental Disabilities. In addition, Dot Yeager is on the call. She's the Chief Business Officer for our board. Jennifer Schuneman, who is our controller, is on the call as well, and also Becky Love, our Director of Early Childhood Education. So we thank you very much for the chance to present. Simply put, our organization's mission is simply to help children and adults to live and learn and work in our community. We support here in Franklin County over 10,000 individuals at any one time. Throughout the course of the year, it's much more than that, but at any one time, over 10,000 children, providing services directly or through contracts with partners. We partner with organizations like Nationwide Children's Hospital, Easter Seals, Creative Housing, Heinzerling, Nisonger Center, which is a part of the Ohio State University Medical Center, Goodwill Columbus, Lifetown, ARC Industries, other providers here in our community. Every person who we serve has what is called a developmental disability. And what that means is that everybody that we serve has a disability that originates prior to the age of 21, 22, or what's called the developmental years. They also have a disability that's expected to last indefinitely, so it's not a broken arm or a broken leg. It's a disability that's expected to last indefinitely, and it results generally in at least 3 significant substantial limitations as the law defines it. And it could be intellectual, it could be mobility, behavioral, communication, things of that sort that allows for people to qualify for our services. They might have a disability that originates, they all have a disability that originates prior to the age of 22, but we will serve people for their entire life. So we serve people that are referred at birth up to individuals who might be in their 90s throughout our community. We directly do provide services in many respects. Certainly our early childhood services, our school programs, are provided directly. We also support a number of other services, adult employment services, vocational services, residential services provided in our community, many private providers throughout the community. Transportation services we provide directly and also through contract. And of course, we provide many therapies and special services, such as our service coordination department that I'll talk a little bit more about later. We are accredited by what's called the Ohio Department of Developmental Disabilities. And we also have, and are very proud to say that we have a 5-star rating with what's called Step Up to Quality, which is the rating that we receive through the Ohio Department of Education. Our board is comprised of 7 individuals. 5 are, of course, appointed by the county commissioners, and 2 are appointed by our probate judge. Our proposed budget for next year is almost $244 million, $243.9 million. And that's very consistent with our long-term levy plan, which is to stay off the ballot until 2028. We have a 10-year levy that will continue through 2028, and our goal is to stay off the ballot. I would also just like to offer thanks to our appreciation and thanks to a couple folks. Rachel Buskey, our budget analyst. Zach Talarek has been very helpful. Of course, our administrator, Ken Wilson, consistently provides guidance and support with our budget process. So we certainly appreciate the help that we've received there. We employ close to 700 staff. Staff include teachers, therapists, service coordinators, bus drivers who provide direct services. We also have many partnerships with community organizations where we provide funding to those organizations, as I mentioned earlier, to provide services that help us to meet our mission. In addition to general laws related to public services and civil service, we are also governed by rules of 4 different state organizations, particularly. One is the Ohio Department of Developmental Disabilities. Another agency is the Ohio Department of Education. Another is the Ohio Highway Patrol, of course, related to our transportation services, and certainly the Ohio Department of Medicaid. So we have several state agencies with literally hundreds of rules and regulations that we also must comply with in our services. This past year has been particularly challenging, obviously, with the COVID-19 pandemic. And I must say, and I'm a bit biased, I have to admit, but our staff, I think our providers, families have really stepped up to the plate in so many respects. Beginning in March, per the governor's order, our preschool and school program shifted to what's called a virtual or remote mode or model for the balance of that school year. And then almost all of the adult services provided throughout the community, such as sheltered workshops, ARC Industries, many other adult providers also closed, which required a significant increase in services for the individuals who are in residential settings, because they were not going to day services. That required the residential providers to step up quite a bit. Then in September, we were able to begin providing in-person services in our preschools and our school program. We have a school, West Central School. It's located in the Franklinton area. And this summer, some of the adult services programs also resumed, which with much smaller numbers based on revised guidelines from the State Department. Just to give you a perspective in terms of the good work that our educational staff have done, I've asked Becky Love, who's our Director of Early Childhood Education, to provide an overview of just some of the good work that she and her staff have done to return children to school. And so Becky, I'll turn it over to you for an update on that.
Well, thank you, Jed. And yes, it's been quite an interesting year for us. Our ECE department serves children ranging in age from birth to 6 years old. Some children are served in their homes, and older toddlers and preschool age children are served in one of our early childhood facilities. We work in partnership with a number of organizations, including Head Start, the YMCA, Ohio State University Medical Center, and all 16 school districts in the Franklin County area. We also work in partnership and very closely with the Help Me Grow early intervention systems in Franklin County. We contract with Easter Seals, Childhood League, Dahlberg Center, Nysonger Center, and Nationwide Children's Hospitals. So we coordinate our work, and they follow the rules and guidelines that are established by Department of Developmental Disabilities, which we all operate under in that regard. In our centers, we serve several hundred children in inclusive classrooms, meaning children with and without disabilities learn together. We serve a very diverse group of children representative of our entire community. And that speaks to the many cultures that are a part of our work here. With the COVID virus, we've had to make significant shifts. In September, we shifted from a 100% virtual mode to a hybrid model. And this hybrid model that we have, we divided our population so we're able to serve the number of children who are enrolled in the program in safe environments that were defined by CDC in terms of class size and distancing. So we operate from a hybrid model where the children are in 4 days, and by the time they might potentially become infected, there are 10 days that they're at home. So our rotation is that they are in 4 days, out the opposite week, which we operate as a time home, and there's remote learning and different types of services that are delivered to the families with the children on that at-home week. We've been also providing services to families who have opted out of in-person classes, and that basically means that they really prefer to receive their services in the home. And we have that number increases and changes. Currently, we have about 44 children out of 326 enrolled with the county, if that gives you an idea of the number of families who are continuing to come in. This allows us to have more than 9 in a class, no more than 9 in a class, and is consistent, as I mentioned earlier, with guidance from the governor. All staff wear masks. We have disinfectant stations and related protocols. Social distancing is practiced where possible with preschoolers. Temperatures are taken before children board the bus. Plexiglass dividers are used in some cases. Outdoor spaces have been expanded so that children can spend a third of their time outdoors as weather permits, relative to offering some safe opportunities. It's very different, but our teachers and therapists make it work, working closely with families and using Zoom as a platform for us to be able to communicate with them on a regular basis. To date, we are aware of only one child who's contacted the virus, and that is one child out of, as I mentioned earlier, nearly 400 children, because we have children also who are in partnership, and we just have one out of that entire group. However, there have been quarantined because of some staff members who've tested positive, so the exposure requirements were in place. So despite the pandemic, we're able to still see children and support their education and in a safe environment. Many thanks to our agency and our board in supporting these safe environments so that families, children, and staff feel safe working here. And just to wrap up, let me offer a word of thanks to the commissioners for your support and your visits. You're always welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Becky. And Becky has done a terrific job. In addition, our school age program has operated very well and been terrific. And I would reiterate the thanks to Commissioner Boyce. I know you were recently visited our early childhood program within the last several months, and other commissioners. So we certainly appreciate your interest and support. Related to the pandemic, there are some other initiatives that we have been very involved with. Certainly we started up a little mini distribution center of our own for PPE for staff and residential providers, sanitizer, mask, those types of things. We've established a program with private providers to help fund unreimbursed costs when they had staffing shortages due to the virus. Residential providers primarily that might lose staffing due to the virus, and they had overtime costs, and we established a private program for that. Early on, we also established a program with a provider that will serve as an isolation and quarantine center for those small providers who had staffing issues due to COVID. For people that might not be sick enough to be in the hospital, but also could not be at home. And this has worked out to be very effective in those unique situations. Our service coordinators, are sometimes referred to as case managers, were able to revise program plans to allow for additional Medicaid funding to providers who were serving people more during the day. So we were able to make that work for those providers. We helped to coordinate alternative staff assignments for people so that they didn't have as many layoffs or any layoffs in many respects, where adult services staff now were shifted to residential organizations to avoid layoffs and to fill the need for residential because the adult services programs weren't operating. We also established a special COVID testing alternative for individuals to have saliva testing if they cannot tolerate the nasal swab. We have some individuals who have autism who were very sensitive and might have some challenges there. And so on request from our Autism Society, we did establish that. And we've made significant investment in technology, sanitizing materials, adapting facilities, really to support remote and in-person services. So the pandemic has resulted in some funding shifts for this year and next, and that includes the loss of some state dollars. However, we've been able to offset some of those additional costs and these losses with what's called EFMAP, or Enhanced Federal Medical Assistance Percentage. Typically, our Medicaid costs are about 60% paid through federal funds and about 40% either state or our board itself. We commit about $80 million of our budget is Medicaid match. So what's happened is the federal government has enhanced or picked up their percentage due to COVID. And so that's not giving us additional money, but it's lessening our expenditure because we're not having to pay as much for the match. So that has helped to offset some of these additional costs that we are picking up related to COVID. So all in all, I would say that our staff continue to do outstanding work in response to the pandemic, and we expect that to continue in 2021. And before I leave the topic of the pandemic, we just learned this morning, Commissioner Boyce, of your recent hospitalization, and just offer our good wishes and hope you're doing well, and glad to hear that you're recovering. Next, I thought I would offer some comments related to how our work links to the Commissioner's Rise Together blueprint. And as a part of this, I will highlight our performance spotlight which is related to housing and residential services. And first, I would simply say that we appreciate the Commissioner's leadership in providing the blueprint over a year ago, and a special thanks to County Administrator Wilson, who provided an excellent presentation to our board on the blueprint itself. Since the commissioners adopted this blueprint to reduce poverty, our board has adopted several initiatives themselves. Shortly after that, this was about a year and a half ago, we did increase the starting wage of all regular staff positions to the minimum of $15 an hour. We supported a significant allocation of funds from our enhanced FMAP that I just referred to support an increase in direct service professional wages. These are not our staff, but these are people that are actually working in the homes of people, doing personal care, day-to-day work for people in their homes throughout our community. And they are typically low paid positions. And we have supported an initiative that started at the state level to increase those wages throughout the last year and continuing through next year. We continue to invest significant dollars in housing and residential services for people to live in safe housing in the community. In 2021, I think I mentioned earlier, we are allocating about $80 million in Medicaid match dollars to support people in their homes. And what I often say is that this match funding will generate an additional $120 million in federal dollars. So if you add 80 million and 120 million, our Franklin County residents are getting $200 million of services for $80 million in local funding or levy funding. So it's a good return on our investment, if you will. And that is going to the people that have what are called Medicaid waivers. The Medicaid match is also funding a significant amount of employment support services for people and transportation, which are also very important and key components of the blueprint. Creative Housing is the organization we established in the 90s that owns over 400 homes in the community. And this organization also administers our what's called rent subsidy program for individuals who cannot afford their housing. Rent subsidy covers fair market cost for apartments or housing that exceeds 30% of an individual's income. And so that has been very helpful. This housing and residential initiative is our performance spotlight this year, and it certainly links to the blueprint. We're proud, I should say, of our ability to support people in a way so they can contribute to the community and be included in neighborhoods throughout Franklin County. Also like to comment, if I could, just to offer a few comments regarding our efforts related to diversity and equity and inclusion. Our agency, our board, since its inception, has worked hard to support inclusion and equity of all individuals, regardless of disability in our society. We continue to support this in education, offering inclusive preschool services where children with and without disabilities are educated together. We continue to work hard to support people to secure jobs in the community. And as I described, we work hard to support people with housing options in the community. As an example of our employment efforts, ARC Industries serves several hundred individuals who are employed in the community, including many who clean both state office towers every evening. In addition to these efforts, though, I wanted to, which really serve as the core to our mission, this year we have placed increased emphasis on our efforts to prevent any forms of discrimination. Some of the specific actions that we have initiated and are continuing to work on, following, again, the commissioner's lead, our board did adopt the resolution declaring racism as a public health crisis. Also publicize this action widely, not only with our staff, but with providers. We established what we call an equity committee, co-chaired by Becky Love, who you just met, and Gwen Kinsel, who's our EEO coordinator and legal counsel, to research and offer suggestions on proposals on how to eliminate or respond to any forms of discrimination. They are have conducted, in fact, this started earlier this year, before the tragedy related to George Floyd. They are conducting listening sessions, what they're calling town hall meetings, reviewing policies, providing training opportunities. The committee recently conducted a survey and have established several working committees to look at policies, to look at recruitment and retention, training, service-related issues, and how those intersect with race and communication. So they have been doing good work. We've provided a lot of training over the last couple of years on implicit bias and related topics. Again, following the lead of the commissioners, we've worked quite a bit with the Kirwan Institute. And as I've mentioned previously, we have financially supported wage increases for low-paid positions in the provider community, specifically those direct service professionals who serve individuals in their homes. And we, of course, will continue our partnership and services in the community for individuals and organizations that are reflective of our entire community. One example is our relationship, which is very strong, with the Head Start and the number of children that are served in concert with children that we serve throughout our agency. And finally, I would like to just ask our Chief Business Officer, Dot Yeager, to provide you with a sort of a higher level review of our budget, just to give you a perspective in terms of the dollars and what we're requesting. So Dot, I will turn it over to you to share a little bit of information about our budget. And Dot, you may not know this, but you're on mute if in the event you don't know that. Dot is maybe having a little technical problem, and I can certainly share some of the high level information on the budget with Dot's having a little technical problem, it looks like. Basically, on the revenue side of our budget, we basically have four main sources of income. We have two levies. As I mentioned earlier, we have a 3.5 mil levy that is continuous, and another that's a 10-year levy that will expire in 2028. And as I mentioned earlier, we are committed to staying off the ballot until that levy expires. We also receive funding from two state departments. One is the Ohio Department of Developmental Disabilities, the other is the Ohio Department of Education. And our fourth major source of funding, as I mentioned earlier, is Medicaid funding, primarily for service coordination, what are called case management services. Targeted case management is the funding source. Plus, that funding also helps providers in the community. On the expenditure side, our funds are allocated to several major programs. First, we commit significant resources to the early childhood and school age programs that we operate directly, which also includes the transportation services for those particular programs. And the majority of that expense is for staff, teachers, therapists, bus drivers, support staff, people like that. Another major expense category is for our service coordination department. We have close to 200 service coordinators, or what we previously called case managers, who coordinate services and supports for kids and adults. And that generally includes securing Medicaid waivers to help fund the services that are provided in the community. And as I said earlier, we budget approximately $80 million in Medicaid match, which generates that additional federal dollars. And then a significant portion of our funds are for other organizations who help us to fulfill. I've mentioned those earlier and won't repeat that, but those organizations that we partner with and support, again, help us to fulfill our mission. So our board's philosophy has been really to have a mix of services provided directly and others that are through contract. And we, I think, learn from each other, and we have very good partnerships and find that to be a very useful system. So to fund all of this, our proposed budget, as we indicated, is 243.9 million for 2021. So with that, I would simply certainly welcome any questions. And on behalf of our board, I just would thank you all for your consideration of our budget and your support of our services. Again, our commissioners have been very supportive, and your visits out to our centers and the programs have been much appreciated. Some would, I'm sure, say that a reflection of the community is sometimes best determined by how the community supports those in need. And I think we're fulfilling those needs for many people and their families, and we thank you for making that possible. And if I could offer just one sort of unrelated to budget comment, and that is simply to thank the commissioners on behalf of our staff for your leadership this past year. It has not been lost on us that this has been a very unusual, crazy year, and the leadership of our commissioners and the support has been great. When I tell my colleagues across the state, when I talk to superintendents across the state, that our commissioners have hosted regular meetings since day one, going back to March, that generally with over 100 people that might be on the calls. Since this pandemic, and some of those meetings, frankly, were happening 7 days a week for several months. I don't think people can believe that. And just recently, the governor said that he wanted to have defense teams. You have been doing that since March, and so we appreciate it. We appreciate your references to our staff and your support of our staff and your comments on many occasions. And we thank you for your consideration for our budget for 2021. And I'll stop with that. Thank you.
I don't know why they just assumed to unmute me, like I was just gonna the expectations that I would have, I don't know, something to say. But well, Jeb, let me first just say how much it's been just so good working with you. I think that your agency is outstanding, and the work that you do. I've got relatives who access some of the services that we offer through you, and it is life-changing for them, and it's core, because really without this service, a lot of the individuals who are in a lot of your programs, but for this, they wouldn't have the resource or access to good quality of life that we offer through a lot of things you do, whether it's through employment services or school and class. So thank you. And then thanks for the well wishes for me as well. That is definitely meaningful. It's been a little bit of just ongoing recovery, I guess I'd say. But I'm grateful to have so many people who care about me around the county, and that's very meaningful to me personally. So thank you. The one thing that you did say that stood out, there were two things that jump out at me. First, the declaration of racism as a public health crisis. If you could talk for a minute about really what that means and how that transfer in your day-to-day work as an agency. And I just want to kind of learn and understand what does that mean? Or how are you all thinking about racism as a public health crisis? And then two, I want to make sure I heard clear that there's no plans to go to the ballot for anything until 2028. Is that what did I see that correctly? Okay. And and so if you could maybe just talk about those two things, the racism as a public health crisis, and then the sort of logic behind, because that's longer than your normal levy year, isn't it?
I can answer that regarding the levy first. We previously had a 6-year levy. The last one we had was it was for a 10-year. And the way that our statute works is we can have anything up to 10 years or continuous. So it could be anything up to 10 or continuous. Well, when we went through the levy review process in the levy committee in about 2018, I think, or 2017, we were approved for a 10-year levy, and the commitment was to stay off the ballot until that levy expires. And so we are firmly committed to that. And it's possible that we might ask, we can renew our levies a year in advance. So it's possible we may ask to renew it in 2027, but it wouldn't collect if we renewed until after 2028. So we are committed to that. We find it's very helpful. We have what we call a Medicaid Stability Fund, or funding that is sort of in reserve to get us through these years, because as you know, levy funding is flat generally, it doesn't increase. And so as expenses go up due to increased number of people being served or increased services, some people may need services 5 hours today and may need 24/7 services tomorrow. And so we have increases there, plus any increases just due to the inflation. We know they're going to go up, and we know that levy funding is flat. So with that in mind, we have to budget for the entire levy cycle instead of just 1 year at a time. And so we have done that. Our board has been very disciplined, and I think has done a very good job. And so we are well on our way to that, and we are committed to staying off until that levy expires.
Great. And then before you switch over to the public health crisis, did you submit? I don't see anything in the Dropbox with your budget documents. Do we have that, Administrator Wilson? Or am I just not? I'm just not seeing it.
Yes, we
It's
should
in there?
have a brief. A brief should be in there. Not accurate.
Yeah,
Commissioner Grady,
no.
this is Commissioner Grady. It's Dean Hennon-Lang. You might need to refresh your Dropbox, sir.
Dean, did you just call me Commissioner O'Grady?
If I did, I apologize.
He apologizes.
I don't even know how to take that, man. I don't know how I feel about that. You were one of my favorite employees, and now I feel a whole different kind of way about you.
But how
Can
about
you
this?
refresh his Dropbox remotely, like right now, like we need?
No, but it's not coming up in my Dropbox though, so I don't know if I'm not seeing it right, or so
Commissioner
the whole time I
Boyce.
couldn't see it.
Understood, sir. Give me just a moment, Commissioner Boyce, and I will do what I can to assist.
Okay, thanks. Because I don't want to ask questions, Jeb, that are in the budget documents. So that's why I was trying to actually see it.
Sure.
So, but you can go ahead with the other questions.
So so we're firmly committed there. As it relates to racism, obviously, when the commissioners adopted their resolution, and then the incidents that tragedies that occurred in the spring, I think it focused increased attention from our perspective. And actually, prior to that, we had started to have really, I think, as a follow-up to the whole blueprint that the commissioners adopted a year previously. It helped us to move forward and started to have what were called town hall meetings to hear from our staff. And our focus has been on services and how the services are impacted and how are we treating, working with people. We serve a number of different cultures, if you will, a number of different races, a very big reflection of our community, and how are we providing those services. And so sort of a focus on that and the work that we're doing there, but also having some relatively tough discussions, safe discussions with staff to try to understand things that they might share with us. And some of those issues that we learned, have to do with sometimes situations where staff might not be welcome in some people's homes that we serve, and the challenges with how to deal with that. Maybe it's due to race or due to where a person is from, that kind of a thing. So it allowed us to sort of focus on, again, some tough discussions, but to open the discussion to get us to move to the next step. And then we followed up with that, as I said, with our equity committee. And it's not just a committee in name. I mean, it's a committee that is sincerely looking at issues, and they have identified certain issues that we can look at to help sort of drive the discussion. So we have a long way to go, but certainly an effort to recognize that there are problems, and we can do what we can to sort of support discrimination in any way. And so that's kind of where we're moving forward. And we've had, I think, some very good discussions with our staff and some very good actions to support particularly low-paid positions in our community, primarily through the provider community. And we're talking actually several $1 million as it relates to that.
That's outstanding.
Jed, I think what you're talking about is reflective of the community in general having a long way to go on this issue of racial equity. We have a long way to go. And I think your agency does better than many others. What I've seen over time is when I've been over there, you've got a very diverse population that you're serving, and you seem to do it well. The children that you serve and the adults that you serve are a very diverse group of people, and you have such a good track record. When I've been over there, it's been such a welcoming group of people that you're serving. And, you know, the children in particular are so good at mirroring what they see and what they do. And it's been remarkable what those children say and do when I go over there and have been there several times. They say and do what they hear and what they see from the staff, as well as from what they see and do at home, but mostly from the staff and the volunteers over there. And they are nothing but remarkable in what they say. And so I think you've done a really good job of preparing the team. We can all do better. And, you know, I think you're on a good track, and I really want to honor that and commend you for that.
Thank you very much. I give a lot of credit to our staff, particularly Becky Love. I think you met when you visited our early childhood center to read to the kids, if I recall, on more than one occasion. And you're correct. I mean, we're serving a very diverse group in our programs, and we learn different cultures, people that aren't originally from our country that are being served and have different ways of different cultures that we have to learn and educate ourselves. And Becky and her staff and throughout, I think our agency folks have done a good job. But again, we still have a ways to go to learn more. So thank you very much. And again, we appreciate your visits. Thanks much. Thank you, commissioners. We really appreciate your consideration, and we'll look forward to your vote on our budget in December. Thanks very much.